What's up, guys? Welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Ardell, and in today's video we're covering an extremely aggressive and sound opening system for white, trying to figure out what to do against the Caro-Kann with c6. Now we're starting out, as usual, with d4, but now against d5. We're not going in with the advance or with the exchange or even knight c3, but instead playing this off-ball move of f3. And if you've ever watched Ben Feingold before, you know that you should never move your f-pawn to a square like f6, right? But there are exceptions. Here is white. We're supporting our pawn on e4, just like black is supporting theirs. And really what we're trying to do here, guys, is build almost a 150 attack type setup in the sense that, okay, I mean, we're playing f3, we're defending the pawn, our bishop is going to be shielded off on e3, and development is going to come very naturally. There are some moves here that we're going to be covering at the end of the video, including e6 and knight f6. But we're going to first be looking at this move of d takes on e4 because this is by far the most popular move that you're going to see. Okay, in online chess and over the board as well. D captures on e4 is popular, and we need to know what to do against it. All that being said, I know that some of you probably think that this move looks a little bit silly, and in all honesty, it does look kind of weird. That's what I thought when I first saw it. I was going, okay, this is just one of those openings that isn't really going to work. You know, once you hit the elite levels, guys, there's super GMs going with this move, and I'm such a big fan of it. I think I'm going to start playing it in tournaments as well. All that being said, okay, done with my sales pitch. D takes e4. What do we do? Well, we're just going to capture back, right? Just capture back with the f-pawn. And it's pretty trippy. I mean, I've been studying opening theory for a long time in a wide range of systems, and it's not very common where you see it where at move 4, if the opponent's been playing well, they only have one move that gives them a fighting chance. The one move that gives black a fighting chance here is e5. Anything else, and white has over a +1 advantage, which is just crazy to me. e5 is the only move here. What happens if black plays something else? Let's just say something like knight f6. What if they just make a move here? Well, we're just going to make space, right? Make space, kick the knight. Play a move like c4, develop to c3, right? If something like bishop f5 so that the bishop doesn't get trapped behind the pawn on e6, we could just offer a trade. By the way, queen takes d4 does not work. You know, this whole idea of checking and then pinning the bishop because we're going to attack the queen and attack the queen. And, okay, I mean, there's just so much in the air here. Huge development advantage for white. 2 pieces on f5, castling kingside 1 move away. Black's in major trouble. And going back to bishop d3, if black captures off, we take back with the queen. And again, very simple and easy development, right? If black goes for the structure, they're going to be in some trouble because we're just going to play moves like knight f3 and castling. Black's one chance to kind of find some counterplay is with c5, but they can't do it because of the fact that we have d5 available, right? Pawn on c4, knight on c3, and the queen on the d file are all supporting d5. And if we do see the move of c5 and then we push our pawn as well, we're going to be looking at a further push into the 6th rank or even taking on e6 and blasting that game open, right? So going back to that move of f takes e4, you see something like e6, you see something like knight f6, you're going to develop very simply and have yourself a great, easy road ahead. What about this move e5? What do we do? Well, please, if you see this move, please do not take this pawn, okay? Please don't, because black here has a short side check, right? Attacking the king, and because it's a short side check, we can't block with either of our minor pieces, right? This just isn't possible, as it would be on the queen side of the board, right? If we're on the queen side, these pieces could block. But, okay, short side check. The only way we could block is with something like g3. But in that case, black just takes on e4 and then says thanks to the rook. If we move our king up, black kind of just keeps checking us, right? Take off a pawn. Now they're a pawn up. We have an isolated pawn on e4. And it's just not looking too great. I mean, you know, our king can't castle. Keep that in mind. We've already moved it. So black here, you know, knight f6, bring the bishop out, castle quickly, get that king nice and tucked away. Our king is going to be, you know, barely surviving for quite a while. Black here with an easy game. So that is not what we want. Okay, so when we do see this move e5, we're not going to take, but we're instead going to play this specific move of knight f3. Remember that. If you see e5, you got to play knight f3 right away to put some pressure on e5, defend e4, and also defend the square of h4. This is very important. And here there's a few different moves that you could see, including this move of e takes d4. I mean, what happens if black just takes the pawn? We're actually not going to take back. We're going to go full-on Scotch Gambit style with bishop c4. I really do think that the fantasy and the Scotch Gambit go well together, which is a little bit interesting, as well as the fried liver attack. You'll see that in a moment. But okay, we develop this bishop, and the next move we're going to castle. Notice that not only our bishop attacks the weakest pawn in chess because only the king defends it, but our rook is also aimed directly at it. right? We see something like bishop c5. We don't actually really care at this moment that our king is open to that bishop. We're just going to continue with that fried liver attack idea of knight g5 doubling up on this pawn. And it's pretty trippy because it's like d3 check. When do we ever want something like this to happen? But it turns out that if black does this, that they play d3 check, and then they take on c2, we're simply going to gain time, right? We're going to take on f7. We're going to take on c2. What did black gain out of that? Not much, but just more development and a nice tucked king for white, right? In this instance, we're attacking the bishop, and now Stockfish pretty much unanimously wants white to play e5 the next move, right? If bishop d4, e5, you take, we pin your bishop. Something like knight d7 even, e5 still, right? Kicking this knight around, and if the knight captures the pawn off, we take with check, and we're up a piece for a pawn. Black is falling apart here. So all that said, going back to knight g5, let's say we see a move like castling kingside. What do we do now? Well, usually we would take with the knight, okay? And I'm not going to go super into it, but this actually turns out to be a mistake because black has queen e7, and we have a bunch of, discovered checks against the king, but none of them really do anything. Instead, we're actually going to start out with the bishop, which is usually not what we do, but we're going to start out with the bishop and then take with the knight, right? Attacking the queen. And here white, just with a much better game. If we see something like queen e7, we have e5 and white has an edge. And if black takes on f7, we're actually going to continue with the move of queen h5 check, right? They think they got a piece, but we throw in a check. This knight is pinned. And the very next turn, we're simply snatching that bishop off. White here again with a 1 game. See, all going back, if black takes on d4, play bishop c4, castling kingside, Scotch Gambit mode, putting pressure on f7, bringing the knight into it as well. White has a very fun game there. What if black goes with this move? This is also pretty popular. Black here trying to pin the knight on f3. Well, as usual, we're just going to play bishop c4, right? Turns out if you take on f3, we're going to take back with the queen, and we are threatening mate, as well as this pawn on e5 being a little bit vulnerable. And if you play the move of e takes d4 now, we have bishop takes f7 with check, knight e5. And, we're just going to snatch off this bishop. We're going to actually be at even material, but I think it goes without saying that this king is very vulnerable to attack, and white is much better. Black here could play something like king e6, right? Trying to get the knight. And first off, there's nothing wrong with just taking off the bishop with the knight, right? We're obviously better, but here, why not take with the queen, right? Lure that king out. Lure that king out. And, by the way, in that position, king f6 doesn't really work because of queen g5 check, and thanks for the queen. So, okay, if the king comes out, we have knight d2, very next turn, queen f5, and we have ourselves a ball game at move 12, right? So after the move of bishop c4, black has to again be very careful to take on d4 because of that bishop sack idea. What about the move of knight d7? Well, there's some options here, but I myself am a fan of the move c3. I think that this is very tricky. I think that it gives black opportunities to make mistakes, and it really puts the pressure on our opponent, right? Something like knight f6, for example, and we can simply play queen b3, putting pressure on f7, putting pressure on b7, double attack there. Black's going to be in some trouble. And okay, the computer really likes this move, bishop h5, as one of the decent options for black. Bishop d6 also has some complex ideas behind it. But in either case, okay, as white, we're just going to play castling kingside, develop our bishop. White's completely fine here, right? I think it goes without saying that, we got both of our bishops out, a castled king, 2 central pawns, a pawn on c3 supporting the pawn on d4. This knight is pinned, but could be very active later on in the game. We're chilling. We're playing some fun chess. Right. So going back to that move of knight f3, you see something like bishop g4, play that move of bishop c4, right? Looking at that sack idea, if black falls into it, and if they don't, just develop, right? Play c3, I queen b3 ideas, and you'll be in business. What about this move of bishop e6? Now, this is the third most popular option if you look at online chess. It's not super common in terms of the numbers. I have seen some higher rated players go with this, and the computer actually likes it. It's a pretty interesting idea. It's like if you take with the knight, then queen h4 check is played, and they're going to win that pawn on e4. And if we take back with the d pawn, the queens fall off, and white there has a hard time holding on to everything. But in this case, again, we're just going to play c3. And I just feel like white has a pretty simple road ahead, right? Bishop d3, castling kingside. And in a position like this, I think king h1 has some value, right? This is called a prophylactic move in chess. We did this not because there was some kind of threat or check or, oh my gosh, I need to get out right now, but more because for the rest of this game, black is going to have no ideas for tactical play on this diagonal against the king directly, right? For the rest of the game, black could play queen b6, but our king's already out of the way, right? So that really takes the fire out of the counter-attacking chances. I know in my own games, when I'm playing against someone really good and they just play those quiet little moves like king h1 or h3, giving that king somewhere to run, it's like, I can't backrank mate, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it really just kind of extinguishes the fire, right? So king h1 here is actually the computer move, and I'm a big fan of it. From this point, we're just going to continue developing, and we're just playing chess. See, going back to this move of f3 going into the fantasy, if black wants to take, right, and then go into the main line, the only move really that gives them a chance with e5, we're just going to continue. Very easy and fun chess, right? Knight f3, bishop c4, castling kingside, knight g5 ideas, a ton of fun for white there. What if they don't want the smoke? What if black's going, you know what, I don't want to take here. I just want to play a cool and quiet game. I'm going to play something like knight f6. Well, I don't really think that this solves all black's problems. Sure, the game is a lot different, but we can play e5, f4, and a very quick c3. I usually don't recommend making your first 6 move pawn moves, but in this case, the position is closed, right? There's not pieces flying everywhere. Neither king at this point is in danger. We are simply taking up as much space as we can. Black's really only good chance to make any kind of counterplay here is against d4, right? Because if you try to go after e5, we have bishop d3 ideas looking towards the king side, which could be problematic for them. So, okay, let's see. We see this move of c5. In that case, we can just develop, play something like bishop e2 so that we keep an eye on this pawn. And black can put as much pressure as they want on that pawn. We're going to be completely fine. In fact, if they take it, that even helps us more, right? Because it gives us this c3 square for our minor knight on the queen side. Knight c3, ton of space here, and the computer puts it at about a +1 for white, a little bit more than that. And okay, we're chilling. And you know what I'm going to say at this point, we're just playing chess. Going back to f3, what about this move of e6? I actually do think that e6 is very strong for black, followed by this move of bishop b4. And there's some moves here that white could go with. I know that a lot of players like bishop d2, for example, and there are other options available. Although my favorite is this move of a3. And in fact, if you guys want me to, I can make a video just on this move alone. Move 5, a3 against what I think is one of black's strongest responses. Here black has a choice, right? They can go back to a5, and in that case, we can just continue developing, right? Moves like bishop e3, bishop d3. Look at that move of knight e2, castling kingside. We have a nice center. We're chilling. The worst black can do is trade off on e4, and then guess what? e4 is replaced by the pawn on f3. And if they take on c3, they do give us double pawns, right? And this could become a potential weakness as well as our isolated pawn on a3. But what do we get in return? A space advantage, right? A space advantage and just nice developmental chess. Right. And honestly, I mean, here, at least for myself, I would prefer white, although I do think that black has a fighting chance here. I'm not sitting here and telling you that white's crushing this or anything like that, but white does have a very simple game, right? d4 is defended, e4 is defended, and we're just going to start developing, right? In fact, if d takes e4, you do got to watch out because at this point we can't take on e4 because of queen h4 check, again, picking off that pawn. We instead, though, can play a move like knight h3. This is the computer move. It looks a little bit weird, I know, but this knight is honestly just getting out of the way of the bishop and the queen, right? If we play something like knight e2, or if we wait for black to take on f3, this knight may be stuck here for a while. Just get this knight out of the way. It's still attacking some key dark squares on the king side of the board. And if black wants to continue taking on f3, which by the way is the most popular option online, we can take back with the queen. Knight f6, again, the most popular move online. I'm just showing you guys what people play the most against this, right? Knight b7, castling king side, and I love this game for white, right? 2 bishops, I mean, just pouncing down on the king side. We have a battery ram up against f7. We have knight g5 ideas, little queen g3 ideas that we could play, kind of being a nuisance to that pawn. On g7, we can also get this rook involved on top of that. I mean, you know, I don't know if the computer would really like this, but I almost wonder if at some point white could just start going crazy with something like g4, g5, if the opportunity presented itself. Again, fun game here. We're down a pawn. But, I mean, if you look at the development, black has 2 pieces developed. We have 4, right? And, you know, if you want to castle kingside, go right on ahead. If you want to castle queenside, go right on ahead, right? We have a b file open. And just an open game where your king's not going to feel too safe. And remember, you know, whenever there is any kind of, you know, potential threat on this diagonal, a nice little prophylactic move like king h1 doesn't hurt. Although I'd say in this situation, d4 is pretty well cemented. All that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I really enjoy the system a ton. It's very easy to learn. Remember that, if they do take on e4 and play e5, you got to go into that Scotch Gambit type system, play aggressive chess, and have fun with it. Hey guys, wanted to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters for the month of February in 2023. Appreciate you guys a ton. And if you haven't checked out the Patreon before, make sure to go check it out. There's a lot of Patreon exclusive benefits that you can gain, and I'd love to have you join the crew.